Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Training Industry Leader Talk, Leading Through AI Transformation, sponsored by SweetRush, SIY Global, Admire Leadership, and Sponge. So I'm Liz, the Events Marketing Specialist here at Training Industry, and I'm thrilled to have you with us here today. Before we get started, though, I would like to quickly go over a few housekeeping items to help you interact with all of our speakers today and get the most out of today's program. So with that, let's open up those chat windows and let us know where you're joining us from today. I am broadcasting live from sunny and very hot Raleigh, North Carolina, and it is a pleasure to have you with us here today. While you're doing so, feel free to use the chat for any comments to our speakers or to attendees. However, for questions, please submit those questions in the Q&A panel below. All questions will be addressed at the end of today's session during our Q&A section, but no worries if we don't get through them all. The SweetRush team will be reaching out shortly to address those questions. Additionally, once the survey ends, you will receive a brief survey in your browser. Please take a moment to share your feedback on the session and speakers. And all of our sessions are being recorded and archived on trainingindustry.com, and you will receive a follow-up email from us with a link to the on-demand program for you to share with your team. Now, if this is your first training industry event, we would love to welcome you. We exist to make connections among learning and development professionals, and we offer tons of resources to support your role in L&D, like live events like today's Leader Talk, as well as through articles on our website, our magazine, conferences, research reports, and our podcast. Additionally, even our membership. We would also love to hear about what you've learned from today's session on social media. So please follow us on your favorite platform so we can continue the conversation. Without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce you to our first speakers today. We have Tom, who's the Executive Vice President at St. Charles Consulting Group at an IT company, where he leads client growth and shapes the firm's go-to marketing strategy for learning and AI transformation. And then as a solutions architect at SweetRush, Dani helps clients bridge the gap between cutting-edge learning trends and meaningful business impact. So with that, take it away, guys.
Amazing. Thank you all so much for having us today. I'm just gonna get my screen up and running here. I assume you can see it. Tom, if you can give me a thumbs up. Let's see the screen. Perfect. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. And thank you, Liz. We're really excited to be here with you. And our goal today is really to address one of the most pressing questions facing L&D leaders right now. And that is, how do we move beyond surface AI usage to building true fluency, the kind that fundamentally changes how work gets done? So we're excited to walk you through a practical role-based framework to help your organizations close the gap between AI adoption and actual business performance. So Liz already introduced us, but just to share a little bit more about me and my role. So I'm a solution architect here at SweetRush, where I've been for nearly 6 years, and my background spans instructional design, learning strategy, and immersive technology. But really, what I love most about being a solution architect is that I'm in the field connecting with clients like you every single day. So hearing directly from learning leaders, it really gives me an incredible front row seat to the top trends and also some of the real world concerns that are facing our industry. And when it comes to AI in particular, I hear the excitement and also the real work that is required to move past surface usage and drive actual behavioral change. And so I'm excited to dive into that with you today. And I'm thrilled to be presenting alongside Tom Kupetis, partner and executive vice president at the St. Charles Consulting Group. And Tom, I will hand over to you to introduce yourself as well.
Thanks, Danielle. Yeah, welcome everybody. I see we've got people from literally around the world, so it's very exciting that we're spanning the globe this morning here from Chicago, where I'm based. And yes, I'm one of the three partners in St. Charles that help lead the firm. I'm really responsible for everything go-to-market, everything clients, everything markets, everything solution portfolio-wise. And my primary role is figuring out how can we partner with clients to add value from a learning strategy and strategic learning initiative perspective.
Thanks, Tom. And so a quick word for those of you who haven't met us yet. We were founded in 2001, and SweetRush has spent 25 years at the forefront of custom L&D innovation. So we blend award-winning creative craft with emerging technologies like Gen AI, which is the topic of today's conversation, but also augmented reality, VR, gamification, and we also support clients through our specialized talent agency. And earlier this year, we were thrilled to join the NIIT family of world-class learning services, where we get to pair our creative craft directly with the strategic consulting power of St. Charles. And so I'll hand it over to Tom to share a little bit more about their focus, and then we'll get into today's conversation.
Yeah, we've been part of the NIIT family for going on 4 years now, and prior to that, operated independently for over 22 years. So been around a long time. We're really the strategy arm of the company and partner with our colleagues like Danielle and SweetRush. Our focus is really on all things strategic when it comes to talent, performance, learning, and enablement. So we've been doing broad scale talent transformations, everything from assessing the needs of the enterprise, looking at the organizational design of L&D, looking at competencies. More recently, we're on the bleeding edge of the workforce skilling trend and skills strategy, written a couple books on that. Learning and talent transformation is now bleeding into AI transformation. And we'll talk a little bit about both sides of the coin. The thing we're not going to spend time on today, but is a significant focus for us right now, is the impact that L&D AI is having rather on the L&D organization itself. And what does the future operating model for L&D look like when it is AI driven and AI enabled? And then lastly, strategic learning and career interventions. These are learning programs that we may advise on, and design, PMO, and execute and deliver. But these are typically very strategic, tied to some C-suite initiative, some major shift in strategy, an acquisition, a new market, et cetera. So if it's strategic and it's learning, we're involved.
Perfect. So it's clear that every single one of us in this virtual room is standing at the same juncture. AI is not just another software rollout. It's representing a fundamental shift in how business gets done. But the reality is that treating AI purely as a quick productivity shortcut or a standard technology deployment, that really falls short of its potential. The real opportunity here and our imperative is to use AI to elevate decision making and strategy across every role, all while doing so safely within an enterprise framework. And so that's bringing us directly to the core challenge that we see across the market. If everyone recognizes the opportunity, why are so many enterprise AI initiatives really falling short of expectations? So right now, organizations are celebrating high license activation numbers. We have 80%, 90% of Copilot or ChatGPT deployment, for example. But when you ask business leaders if decision speed, quality, or productivity metrics have fundamentally moved, the answer is typically no. And the problem here is the behavior gap. Most employees are stuck in the surface use level. They're using AI as a slightly faster tool to maybe draft emails or summarize notes. But true fluent use happens when teams use AI to change the structure of their daily work. So in sales, for example, that's not just generating an email, it's using AI to stress test a complex deal strategy. Until we close that behavior gap by role, tool access will never really translate into business performance. And so to show you how we solve for this, I'm going to hand it back over to Tom to walk you through our framework for AI fluency and really the strategic model designed to bridge that exact gap.
Thank you. So I admit there's a lot going on this slide, and I will try and break it down and not spend the next 20 minutes doing so and move quickly. But when we think about this, we think about its component parts, and not all parts need to be active and in motion at the same time, but they all need due consideration in your overall strategy for adoption and building fluency on an enterprise level. And at the top of this is governance. And I don't think I've talked about a strategic initiative in learning and development that didn't involve governance when it was going to be successful. And governance is both governance and sponsorship by the leadership. Many leaders that we talk to in the C-suite that are investing in these AI capabilities are asking questions about, what am I receiving for the investments I'm making? What am I funding exactly? What return am I getting for that funding? Then they're also thinking about policy, risk and compliance. Everybody's concerned about data privacy and security. And then this concept of AI ethics and transparency, like what do we owe the human element of our workforce? Like what is ethically moral and good and right, and how should we be treating that? And the bottom of this, the bookend is really measurement, right? So those two things go hand in glove, which is if we're going to make these investments, if we're going to invest in the tool set, if we're going to invest in token consumption, if we're going to invest in infrastructure, policy, what are we going to measure? How do we measure it? How do we determine behavior change? How do we determine how real work's being impacted? And how do we do so in a way that we continuously improve what we're doing and improve the employee experience while we improve the overall performance of the organization and the enterprise? And then if you really break this down, AI fluency is really nothing more than a standard change management opportunity, and we can't discount change management. But because AI is moving so fast and the technology is so innovative, sometimes people don't think about it in the traditional change management sense. The middle layer of these three rectangle shapes are really our point of view on the level of, I'm going to call it complexity in terms of the user experience in adopting and becoming fluent. And where most people have started, and it's not wrong and it's not unwarranted, is this foundational piece, which is, I'm going to use the term catalog for lack of a better word. But people have gone out and either done a lot of analysis and selecting a series of courses around AI, or in many cases, they've turned to things they already have a license for. So, hey, I've got LinkedIn Learning. There's a whole series of AI courses on LinkedIn Learning. They seem pretty good. I'm going to roll them out. And as Dani mentioned, adoption tends to be high because curiosity is high. Satisfaction tends to be high, but I think a lot of people don't know what they don't know about what they just learned. But adoption is where this abstraction transfer gap's occurring. The middle layer is really where you start to align this to roles and personas and talk about work outcomes, and that's immersions. And Dani's going to go deep on that. And then I'll spend a lot of time focused on real world application. This is learning by doing. This is action learning. This is taking the tool set, the role, the needs of the role, the opportunities, and creating real things that can be used to create and build muscle memory that's repeatable and actionable. So that's the entire framework at a high level. The last thing I'll say before we move on is you don't have to have all of these and build upon it. It's not a system, right? You can start anywhere you want within the process. All right. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
Oh, good.
All right. From a foundations, really quickly, we're not going to spend a lot of time on this, but we at NIIT do have a catalog and we do think it's a better mousetrap. And so I'll just give you the kind of what I call the back of the baseball card stats for those that's culturally makes sense. But there's 77 courses. The cool piece about that is they're aligned to these 9 capability spines. So it's got a functional lens, it's got an industry lens, and it's got a tool set lens. So there's sort of the technical side of it for deep technical experts, and then non-technical for the various role and industry folks. It's completely customizable. We've got 8 standard business functions that we've defined that we think cover the vast majority of most organizations with an industry overlay, deep dive on multiple tools, not just written generically, which is a big problem in a lot of AI courses I've seen. And we have the ability to run multi-day intensive boot camps for specific technical audiences. And those have proven to be incredibly successful with some of the world's most discerning organizations. All right, enough about the catalog.
All right, so that, as Tom mentioned, that is basically scratching the surface. So now, once we've aligned everybody on, what is AI, what are some approved guardrails within an organization and so forth, how do I write a good prompt, how do I evaluate AI generated content, all the basics. Now we need to push people into the next level here. So we've set that foundational literacy, and that's where most organizations currently are. And now we're moving into how do we bridge that gap between understanding AI conceptually and now helping learners to actually use it in their daily work. So this is brand new territory, and we always have to remember the human behind the screen. Some learners are excited to experiment, but many feel apprehensive. Maybe they're holding back on applying AI to their real work because they're afraid of making a mistake or generating inaccurate data, or maybe stepping outside of compliance boundaries. And so that's why Pillar 2 exists. Here we build role-based immersive simulations that give teams a safe sandbox to meet every learner where they are. So they're risk-free environments. Here, employees can come in, they can test prompts, they get real-time feedback, they can fail safely, iterate, refine, and really the goal here is to turn more passive theory from that first pillar into active habits. So we want to give people the muscle memory and the confidence to collaborate fluently with AI. So to understand why these immersive simulations drive behavioral change, it comes down to these three core principles. So first, industry and role-specific context. As Tom mentioned, a big flaw of a lot of existing AI foundational training programs is that they're very generic. And in order to move the needle, learning cannot be generic. So our simulations are grounded in actual workflows, and they solve realistic day-to-day role tasks that employees recognize. Second, we have safe sandbox experimentation. So people need room to test, to make mistakes, to iterate without risk. And third, behavioral habit loops. We're practicing prompt refinement and output evaluation repeatedly. So learners are turning those steps into second nature habits. This is what allows them to build true confidence. So to see how this immersion philosophy comes to life in practice, I wanted to take you through a real-world case study here with a global architecture and engineering firm. Like many organizations, they were navigating the core hurdles of AI adoption, which were, keeping pace with rapid technological advancements, ensuring ethical and governed AI usage, and building readiness across a very diverse global workforce. They needed a solution that would move employees past that general awareness into confident role-specific application. So let's take a look at the learning journey here. And the program here is built around 4 key solution features, and I'm going to take you through each of these on the next few slides to really show how they work together to build safe, role-based capability and confidence. So first we set the stage using immersive storytelling. Because this was built for a global architecture and engineering firm, providing highly relevant contextual scenarios was essential. So we wanted to ground the experience in their actual work, which helps learners to immediately see how AI applies to their daily jobs. This helps to bridge the gap between theory and real-world application. To anchor the experience, we built a narrative here around a major infrastructure crisis. So for example, this bridge collapse that you see here on screen. Throughout the course, learners are tasked with using AI to help navigate the response and plan the reconstruction of that bridge. Next, we provide real-time support through an AI assistant and coach. This coach directly links back to the foundational content from Pillar 1 that Tom covered earlier. So as learners progress through their training, it serves as this ongoing anchor. Whenever learners have questions, maybe they need to clarify key concepts or want to double-check enterprise guidelines, they can consult the assistant on demand. So whether it's defining complex terms or offering personalized feedback on prompts, it gives employees a safe, immediate resource to reinforce their learning in real time. Third, we move into active AI practice simulations. So these simulations tie directly back to the overarching narrative and theme of the course. So within that bridge reconstruction storyline, learners step into governed scenario environments to practice prompt engineering on real-world artifacts, like analyzing waste reduction proposals, for example, or reviewing complex project documents. By giving learners a safe space to iterate on their prompts and to critically evaluate their outputs, these practice loops are designed to turn that conceptual knowledge into genuine mastery. We're helping them to build the confidence and the capability that they need when working alongside AI in their day-to-day roles. And finally, we make sure that we create this immediate transfer to daily work through role-specific AI application. So we want to make it immediately relevant to them. So for example, how can I, as an engineer, use AI specifically in my role? Or how can I, as a project manager, use AI specifically in my role? So each module presents 6 common tasks tailored to that exact function, paired with actionable copy and paste prompt libraries. So learners can test these prompts immediately within their own AI tools, seeing the results firsthand, and walking away with practical workflows that they can apply on the job right away. I'm going to take us through another case study very quickly because I want to make sure we have time for pillar 3. But this is another case study that is currently in development for a global biopharmaceutical organization. Again, like many enterprises, they have the foundational AI awareness training in place, but their leadership quickly realized that general awareness just isn't enough to change that day-to-day workplace behavior. So the mission here is to take their global sales and marketing teams beyond basic prompting and move them into true strategic workflow application. So to make that leap, we built a custom practice engine powered by 3 core capabilities: progressive capability milestones to structure the learning growth, a multi-agent AI system, which is running behind the scenes, and a Socratic coach that leverages instructional friction to build true critical thinking. And I'll show you what I mean by all of that on the next few slides. So the practice engine is structured around these 3 milestones that every learner must clear. Milestone 1 is foundational. Learners focus on applying the company's core AI framework directly to their daily tasks. Milestone 2 is contextual. This is about deep dive engineering here. We're learning how to anchor AI models in proprietary data, in market research, and creative briefs. And milestone 3, now we're moving into more of the strategic realm. So here teams are using multi-perspective application. For example, they're using AI to simulate stakeholder personas and stress test strategic ideas before execution. Underneath these milestones is an advanced multi-agent AI system. So instead of relying on a standard single coach, we have these specialized AI agents in the back end that they're running behind the scenes to evaluate the learner inputs and adapt the experience in real time. We can geek out on this underlying engine for the full hour. So if you're interested in this technical architecture, we'd love to schedule a separate call to walk you through it. But at a high level, it gives us an incredibly intelligent, multi-layered coaching environment. The defining philosophy inside the sandbox is a strict coaching rule. The AI never hands over the answer. So instead of an AI tool that simply generates quick outputs, the AI coach uses Socratic diagnostic questioning to guide the learner through what actually makes a prompt effective. So if a learner struggles, the system offers them structured scaffolding. It gives them subtle hints and nudges, but strictly requires the learner to generate the correct strategic reasoning themselves before moving forward. That's how we move teams from passive consumption to building true, lasting muscle memory. And lastly, when you build an ecosystem like this for a global enterprise, the immediate questions are always about security, accuracy, brand alignment. We solve this through a layered security and design approach. So first, we use retrieval augmented generation to ground the engine. So the system is locked into a specific verified knowledge layer with your policies and your frameworks. Second, safety is structural. Because the input passes through those separate agents, the system checks for any scope violations before a single word is ever generated back to the user. We're also provider agnostic, which means that we can choose what AI foundational model to use based on your objectives. And most importantly here, this system is AI augmented, but it is human perfected. The AI brings the incredible scale and the real-time adaptation, but SweetRush's learning experts are the ones who design the blueprints, we author the rubrics, and we map those milestones. So now that we've built foundational literacy in pillar 1, we've developed those safe role-based confidence in pillar 2, the final piece here is connecting that capability directly to business performance. So that brings us to our 3rd pillar, which is real-world application, where teams stop practicing on simulations and they start using AI to solve live, active business tasks in real time. And so here I'll hand it back over to Tom to walk us through this 3rd pillar here.
Thank you. So we talked about this abstraction transfer gap, and where the effectiveness of a library stops and where we need to start looking at immersion like Danielle just talked about. So we can move on. I recognize time's getting tight here. But this is an example of, if you think about the audience, a pharma industry example for a client we supported, right? They've got a highly, this company had a 83,000 workforce across 180 countries. They have regulatory change, country by country they have to factor in. They've got specialized scientific roles, multiple divisions. So, if you factor this into the context of trying to do an enterprise AI rollout, massive complexity. And I can show you one of these for almost every industry represented on the call, because that's how it is. And these things need to be factored into the solution. We can go forward. So there's really two levels of adoption, but we think only one is going to really create competitive advantage for an organization. And I'll look at that on the next slide. And that's really about this work architecture piece. The tool efficiency piece is sort of table stakes. You need that foundationally, but once that's there, you immediately have to look into work architecture. So again, back in this sort of pharma example, how do you compress drug discovery cycles from years to months? How do you accelerate global regulatory submissions at scale? How do you rethink things operationally end to end from a process perspective if you're leaders? So it's those types of things where we focus. This solution, by the way, we've dubbed it Praxis. Most of you may know this, but Praxis is the Greek philosophy of learning by doing. And we really think the way that the enterprise light bulb goes off with AI is learning by doing in a controlled environment. We can go forward, thanks. So what is Praxis and how does it work? It's a proven methodology for turning knowledge into action. It's actually a 20-plus-year-old action learning lab model and methodology that St. Charles crafted and perfected over those 20 years, applied specifically to the AI need. And it breaks down into three, what we call Praxis lab structures: task labs, process labs, and strategy labs. Think about these aligned to personas. So the task lab tends to be aligned to individual contributors. Process labs tend to be focused on the management layer, and strategy labs focused on leadership. We can go to the next slide. And the key is people don't do this abstract. They bring real opportunities and problems to the table. And what I mean by that is, if we're going to run a lab, the structure is up to 24 people in a lab, and those 24 people will submit about a week prior to their designated AI engineer, which is the facilitator, the opportunity that they want to work on in the classroom. Those 24 people, by the way, we work with the leadership and learning to decide, do we want them all to be in the same function? Do we want them to be cross-functional? Typically, whether it's task, process, or senior leadership, they're all within that bucket. So if they're individual contributors, might be cross-functional, might all be in sales or finance or operations or marketing. But then the facilitator looks at the nature of the request and then puts people into pods of up to 4. So you could have 6 pods of 4 in a lab, and then they show up and it's time to do some real work. So we can go to the next slide. So that's the pre-work piece, is that submission. That's all they have to do. Then the facilitator shows them, after they're aligned and assigned, how to go about following this. And you'll see the structure that we use to do this. And then the teams work in rounds and do hands-on practice. So they're sitting there with their AI tool set. So if that particular audience has access to Copilot and Gemini, they show up and their hardware has Copilot and Gemini. They're working with the exact limitations or permissions relative to data, what they can prompt on, data sources they can use. So it's structured in how they actually do work, not some generic scenario. And then they go through rounds of structured debriefs. But what they're doing is they're building something that they can take back and use on the job in the context of the opportunity that they submitted prior to the workshop. And that's where we think the light bulb goes on. And then we make them commit to actions, at least to each other, right? Within their pods and within their cohorts. So it's like, okay, now that I understand some of these outputs relative to what I do, I'm going to take it back and use it in theory. And we follow up on that. So we can go to the next slide. So I talked a little bit about this, but hands-on practice, there's 38 common use cases for AI adoption, and I'll show you that in an upcoming slide.
Oops, sorry about that.
Yeah, you can go
Okay.
forward.
Okay, here we go. One forward.
No, no, stay there for a second.
Okay.
So what we're really trying to do is get what we call first contact adoption, meaning these labs are a half day. You're not going to be able to build complex tools in a half a day that change how work gets done across an enterprise, right? But the goal is to do enough to have people unlock the power of the capability of the AI platforms and experience the art of the possible. One of the things we experienced early on when we did this is we started a little too complex and we ran some practice labs and we found just waiting for the AI to return a result sometimes took 10, 15, 20 minutes. That doesn't work. So that's all vetted up front. We try to get people over the initial fear, we give them basic practice, and we talk about how they can go back and use it independently. And people will say to us, well, why do I need St. Charles to do that? Can't I do that myself? And that's the next slide, Danielle, which is we've got 38 methods and 8 cognitive task domains that drive this entire process. So depending on the form and nature of what those submissions are, they align to these. Our facilitators are experts in leveraging these, and it creates an experience that feels very seamless, where both the human, the technology, and the desired output are all integrated into an experience. And people really, really learn from collaborating with each other. And sometimes people are in a pod and they're working on something that isn't even relative to their function, but they can connect the dots mentally because they see, if it works in operations, I can do it in sales. All right, I'm about done, I promise.
No rush. We have a couple more minutes here and then we can open up for questions.
So we can move on. I want to talk about measurement. So when we talk about measures, so there's the immediate piece of what happens in the workshop. Then what we're going to do is we're going to categorize and catalog those outputs. So if we have 24 people in a workshop, we would create 6 potential use cases. We tag those to a taxonomy and we catalog and we make them available. So if somebody hasn't had an opportunity to go through a Praxis lab yet, but they're in a role, they can see what others have done and they can actually access those. And in some cases, we make the tools available. That's a company decision. We also go and do qualitative measurement. So we're going to talk to them at 30 days and we're going to talk to them at 90 days and say, did you use the tool that you created? What other ways have you used AI? How has it changed how you work? What efficiencies have you gained? How have you shared these with others? And what we're doing is, if you think back on that picture where we had governance and measurement, we're focused on the measurement to be able to report back to senior leadership that these investments, not only in the Praxis labs, but in the AI infrastructure overall, is moving the needle. And so it's that difference from, yes, I'm consuming it, and yes, I like what I consume, to I'm applying it, and it's making a difference in how I work. And then this builds over time. So every lab you run, your use cases get bigger, the library grows, and you'll eventually have this just-in-time performance support tool that we believe, if you couple it with then some AI coaching capability on the back end, now you can have ultimately what you want to get to. The ultimate in this is to have a personalized mentor, a personalized coach. There's a lot that has to happen on the back end for that to work at an enterprise level, but this is setting us on that journey. And so what do you keep forever? The other piece of this is we're not going to be the ones that have to train you. We will teach you how to fish, so to speak. So you'll have a whole set of your own AI engineers that can facilitate. You'll have that growing solution library, and the intelligence layer of the data as we measure over time will continue to build. So it's really an organizational MRI relative to AI adoption. Okay, I think that's enough from me.
Thank you
Let's
so much.
yeah,
Yeah.
we'll open it up for questions. I see some have flown in the Q&A.
Perfect. We have about 10 minutes here for questions, so keep them coming in the Q&A. But I see a couple of questions around measurement. So, for example, and I think you spoke a little bit about this, Tom, but quantitative measurement versus survey questions, and how people feel it impacted them. Not sure if you want to
Yeah.
speak a little bit more about that.
So one of the things I'll say is, if I made it sound like Praxis is very cookie cutter and off the shelf and exactly as I described it, those are the pillars of it, but it's really tailored to each organization. So it takes us about 8 to 12 weeks to work with the learning leadership and potentially other business leaders to structure what the right answer is. So in some organizations, they'll say, we've got survey fatigue. If we do another survey, people are going to lose their minds. We really think qualitative data is the best. We like to do sampling of actual live interviews, and those have been done via phone and also via technology where we're live chatting with people. But we can do surveys. So the measurement strategy is really tailored to each organization, as is the number of labs we run, where we start. Sometimes we start with task and process. Strategy labs are different. We didn't talk about that, but that's where you're really sitting with leaders. You're not teaching them to prompt. You're teaching them to think about organizational process change, organizational redesign. And the last thing I'll say is Praxis is focused on what I call everyday AI. There are big bet AIs happening in every large global Fortune 1000 company where organizations investing millions of dollars to change process. This is not that. This is the everyday AI that we expect individual contributors, managers, and leaders to be driving.
Yeah. And there's a follow-up question here. I think a lot of interest around measurements, but how do you keep your measurements universal and standardized? So how are you differentiating between understand, create, use, explain, and so
Yeah,
forth?
we can take the measurement conversation offline, Joel, if you want to have a deeper conversation with it, and I can actually bring some of our psychometrician and measurement strategists into the conversation. But we've got a whole series of standardized methods to bifurcate this and strategize to think through what's the right answer.
Perfect. And then there's another question here from Joel, where, do you use something like Bloom's taxonomy to set the measurable objectives? And from our perspective, we absolutely use those kinds of frameworks. So if we think back to the overarching framework that Tom presented with the three different layers, where we have foundational, then we have the AI simulations, and then the live practice and praxis workshops that Tom took us through. That certainly could span the spectrum of Bloom's taxonomy. So we have the foundational, where your measurement objective might be, just the basics, just remembering, just simple recall of some of the concepts. Moving into your simulations, where now we're giving learners an opportunity to actually apply their skills. So we're working our way through that taxonomy, if you want to think of it that way as well.
And obviously, to schedule a demo, our contact info is up on this slide. Just shoot us an email and we'll work with you to coordinate, get the right people there, and really understand
Absolutely.
what it is you want to see.
Yep, and I know we really powered through a lot here, so please do reach out if you have any burning questions and want to connect for a demo. We'd be more than happy to dive deeper into a whole lot of these concepts here. All right, another question here. What size organizations are you targeting?
Danielle, you want to go first on that?
Yes.
I think we have the
So
same answer, but go ahead.
same answer, absolutely. So we're working with large global organizations, enterprise at the enterprise level. So we're looking for ways that we can scale these kinds of learning experiences across multiple learners, across multiple regions. So very much a challenge to do so, but that's why this framework works really well. But the same philosophy could certainly be applied to smaller organizations as well. Tom,
Yeah,
would you add anything?
similarly, our focus is
Mhm.
Fortune 1000, Global
Yeah.
2000. Typically, we're not working with mid-market firms, although we have in some cases. So, if you've got a concern about your organization size, don't hesitate in reaching out. We'll if we aren't the right answer for you, we can for sure get you to somebody who is.
Thank you for keeping the questions coming here. So let's see this next one. Are you only having AI solutions, or do you TMS and LMS? So from our perspective, I'm not sure if I'm understanding this question correctly, but we create custom AI simulations or AI training programs for organizations, and then we basically SCORM wrap them so that they can live on your LMS and learners can access them from your LMS. So we have a team of LMS consultants who can make sure that we're getting everything up and running so that it's easy to scale the course, that everybody can access it, so that you're able to access the data as well on the admin side of things. So everything we create is done with the intention of integrating it with your existing ecosystem.
There is a component on the AI transformation side where we look at the learning technology stack relative to AI, right? And how does it transform and change? Additionally, on the NIIT side, we do have a whole human capital management technology group that does a lot of configuration, implementation, integration, data, data analysis. So if you've got needs around talent or learning management systems, depending on the nature of it, we're likely able to address it. May not be Danielle and I, but somebody.
Absolutely. And at SweetRush, we are agnostic. We're technology agnostic. So we work with many different LMS platforms, talent LMS platforms, and so forth. We work with different AI tools. So the simulations that we showcased, one was built using ChatGPT in the back end, another was built using Copilot in the back end. So really, as Tom mentioned, we'd work together up front in an analysis phase to understand what does your ecosystem look like, what does your AI tech stack look like, and design the solution with all of those components in mind. My issue, the training gap analysis to all integrated. So yeah, I think let's take that offline. Please do reach out. We'd love to connect to talk through how we might approach those kinds of challenges.
Yeah.
And then we have a couple minutes left, so if there are any other questions, please add them. But there's a comment in the chat, not necessarily a question, but it was around we don't augment through AI if we diminish humans, and I think that's such a really important point here, is that we're not just it's not just about the AI. There's a lot of human intervention that is happening in the back end. So on the simulation side, our learning experience designers put a lot of energy into designing the experiences, into prompting them in the back end, into creating those guardrails that are making the simulation successful and safe, and so that they're grounded in your content and so forth. So I really love that philosophy, in that the humans will always be unpromptable, but we're teaching a new skill and a new technology, and that's it's important to remember the humans on the other side of it as well.
The other question in the chat, the measurement data lives within your ecosystem and it's tailored to your ecosystem. So we're not going to hold you captive within any of our systems.
Same on the SweetRush side. All right. Any other
We're about at time.
questions? All right. So with that, Liz, I'll hand it over back to you. But just to say to everybody, thank you so much for spending your Monday morning with us. I know it's a busy start to the week here, but we've enjoyed our conversation, and we do encourage you to reach out. We would love to connect, and I hope you have a wonderful week ahead.
Yeah, no, that was a jam-packed session. I agree with Ollie. A very well-packed 30-minute session. Thank you both. And yes, if you have any questions, please reach out to the SweetRush team. They are amazing. They will address any and all questions. So I appreciate you both kicking off today's event on such a great start. We're going to keep the energy going, though. We do have about the SweetRush team gave us an additional 2 minutes, so we about have a 17-minute break. Up next, we do have Ryan for their session sponsored by SIY Global, 3 critical shifts to build the human skills that drive ROI on AI. So in just a moment, I will end this session. You can join our next session by returning to that event lobby. And if you look on the top, there will be a session tab. So you can press that, and that will have all of the sessions there. So I hope you all stick around for our next session, which will begin at the top of the hour. I will see you all soon. Bye, everyone.